I know you're not doing it on purpose, but I'm getting such like a cartoon crunch sound effect from your mouth. It's perfect. Oh God. Oh God. Yes. Welcome to an emergency episode of Is It Still Good? This is the show where we don't typically have emergency episodes, but today we had to take our rose-colored glasses off, bury them in the snow, mark them with an ice scraper, and drive away forever and look back upon something from our youth that was accidentally experienced by us both very recently. So I'm Bear Kennedy in Chicago, and joining me today,
Andrew Carter in Los Angeles. So this is an emergency episode. Basically, we've never done this before. This is our first one. An emergency episode constitutes us both revisiting something at the same time and needing to talk about it.
Yeah.
Good, bad, whatever. Now that happened this weekend with the Coen Brothers 1996 classic Fargo.
Yes.
I had not seen this movie since 2009.
Oh, that's a stretch. Why do you remember that so well?
Because I remember for years and years and years, people telling me, you got to see Fargo, you got to see Fargo. And then I think I was figuring out, where I could see it. And this was way before streaming. I mean, Netflix was having streaming, but in terms of what was licensed to Netflix, it wasn't as big. It wasn't anywhere near as big as it is now. And so I remember being at a Best Buy and seeing the Blu-ray for like $10 or something, maybe even cheaper. And I was like, I might as well just buy it. I'm pretty positive I'm going to like this movie because everybody that tells me to go see it is like, it's amazing. And I watched it once and I absolutely loved it, but I just didn't revisit it for a long, long time. I don't know why. But I remember like loving the music and, loving the story and just feeling like, oh man, this just is just a great, great movie. And then when was it? I think you texted me Friday.
Yeah, I think it was Friday.
It was Friday night. And Bear texted me, dude, just rewatched Fargo. Got to put that in the once-a-year rotation. That ruined me. I'm a little high, but it ruined me.
It did.
And I was like, oh, wow. And then I log on Netflix, and it was on my homepage. It was just there.
Yeah.
It was like, critically acclaimed favorites or whatever. And I was like, this is a sign. It's telling me, like, you got to watch this. But I still own it on Blu-ray, but I just hadn't. So I was just like, fuck it. I just put it on Netflix. And I watched it twice in the last, 48 hours, maybe honestly, maybe even 3 times. I feel like twice though. I was a little high too, so I'm trying to remember, like, because one of them I watched it a little bit high, and then like today I was like, I want to watch it dead. So not that it makes a difference, and it didn't. No. But I was like, I still want to watch it with a clear head. But yeah, I just like had to revisit it. And it was, it blew my fucking mind, and I liked it even more this time. And the fact that I could watch it in such close succession really spoke to me, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, this is that good. What about you? So what prompted you to watch it this weekend?
I watched, like, last week, I turned on, I was just kind of killing time, and I turned it on. It was on Pluto TV. This thing, it's streaming fucking everywhere. So if you've never seen it, no better time. It's on Prime Video and Netflix right now.
Wow. Yeah, you got no excuse.
And Pluto TV was just running it. So I just watched like 25 minutes of the middle of it just because I turned it on. Just like that, I don't know. That might be a cultural thing that those of us who grew up in the 90s are used to, because I was talking to my one buddy Ralph about it too, like just picking up a movie on TV just because it's on, like with commercials, and you watch a random amount of the middle of it is a thing that I don't know that people are going to understand what that was like, because you choose
that's
everything.
Such a good point. Yeah, I never would have thought of that, but that's so true.
Yes. Like you choose to watch stuff, like you choose to stream stuff, but there's still part of me that likes to just turn on a movie that I've already seen and I like, and just pick it up at a point in the middle, like, oh, well, I might as well just watch this. And that's a bad way to watch movies. It's objectively terrible, but there's something about
But is it if you've seen it before?
I don't know. It's just really weird. There, like I don't. If I watch a movie, it's rare that I'll fast forward to parts of it. Even with DVDs, even with the chapter breaks being a big deal. When DVDs were first a thing, I don't really do that. Like I usually just watch it. I want like the full experience of watching it from the beginning to the end. But
me too. But one thing that helps about chapter breaks is if you like Zoe and I have been rewatching the Harry Potter movies, and those are fucking long, and so we don't always watch them in one sitting. Because we're older, we get tired, we go to bed, we pick it up the next day. So the chapter breaks are great because it's easier to just get right to where you were. Yeah. And depending on the Blu-ray you have, or if you're watching it a digital copy, it usually just picks up where it left off. But for whatever reason, these Blu-rays don't. So you have to get to it. But we remember where we were. But yeah, I think that like actually watching a movie in the middle, like picking it up on TV, if you've seen it before, is just a testament to how much you love it.
I guess so. I've watched a ton of movies on cable, back from when I was a kid. It's just, it's not something I really do that often. And yet I did it last week. And I don't know. It's weird. I do enjoy that experience, even though I do fully believe that the only reason like every white person who lives in the suburbs' favorite movie is The Shawshank Redemption is because Ted Turner bought the rights to it and played it every Saturday for 20 years. So they always on AMC, and they always have that experience watching it. Like it's like that movie where like boring people love just, I'll just turn on Shawshank. It's just always on with commercials. Like I'd be surprised if there was, or rather I would not be surprised if people who claim that that's their favorite movie have never seen the unedited version of it.
Yeah, dude, fuck. That's another one I need to rewatch. That was another one I discovered in like 2009. Bought it on Blu-ray, watched it once, loved it.
There's no reason to buy that movie. It's on constantly, and it's also less good than people tell you it is. So.
Oh wow, that's a hot take. All right,
we won't make this show about that take, but that. Yeah. But that was something just that it was weird that I was thinking about this week is like coming into the middle. So I saw like 20 minutes. I saw from Marge arriving at the murder scene to like 20 minutes past that. And then we were flipping around for shit to watch. And I saw it on streaming on Friday night. And I said, Jackie, you ever see this movie? She's like, no. And I'm like, we should watch this. I think you might like it.
Dude, I said the same to Zoe. She didn't end up watching it with me, but I've been telling her like, it's so up your alley because she loves murder and all that shit.
Thriller type stuff.
Yeah.
And Jackie said she didn't hate it, which for me is really good. That's a huge endorsement of a movie that I make her watch, is if she just doesn't hate it.
I can't remember. Does she have discerning taste, or does she just not like you telling her you gotta watch this?
I don't think she likes when I tell her you gotta watch this, but she likes rom-coms and stuff that's a little lighter.
Okay.
And I don't like that stuff as much. I like stuff that's a little, for lack of a better word, artsy. So
heavier, darker.
Yeah, and I'll watch a rom-com if I'm hungover and I just need to like experience a nice story to remind me.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a good rom-com, dude. I just rewatched When Harry Met Sally. I love that fucking movie.
I do too, but that's like the one that's like above kind of the cut of a lot of the stuff that's.
It is. That's like a great. It's not just a good rom-com. It's a great film.
Yeah,
like, no question. And I just rewatched this one. I think is a good rom-com. Maybe not necessarily a great film. Love Actually.
I haven't watched Love Actually in a long time, but I remember liking it more than I thought I would.
It's a lot of fun. It's great. It's too long. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes. Like there's a lot of storylines and everything, which I guess you can justify the length with that, but I still think it's a little too long. Anyway, so yeah,
Fargo, watch it then, and then I did the same thing. I watched it this morning as well. I drank way too much coffee today. I don't have that much to do, and I've got the coffee weirds.
Yeah. Are you off for the week?
No, I'm working, but there's not much going on. So
not much going on, right?
I'm just kind of staring at my desk and drinking coffee, and now I'm all wound up. But I agree. I wanted to watch it again, and I kind of had the time, and I was like, all right, I'll just put it on the background. I fully watched 100% attention, didn't have it on in the back.
Oh, yeah.
I was watching the movie.
I will say that the first time it was 100% attention. This time was mostly attention, but I was taking little notes of things that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to ask you before we get into like watching it now, do you remember? I know we were young. We were like probably 7 or 8 when it came out. I think it was 96. Actually, I do. It was March 8th, 1996, which is interesting for an awards film to come out that early.
Yes, way early, especially back then. Now you could make an argument that the end part of March is the beginning of summer blockbuster season, but I would say not then.
But even so, even in 2017, Get Out came out in February, and that lasted through the whole year.
Yeah, and that's really weird because February is a dumping ground. So coming out right after, like, beginning of March, that's essentially right after the Academy Awards would have aired, which is that's why that's kind of a shit time for movies. It's a great time if you love bad movies and horror films. It's like, it's a fucking buffet if you're me, but typically not the awards type fare.
Right. So it came out in March. We were obviously, I didn't see this in theaters, but one thing I do remember is I always remember the poster at the local video store, the red font and the body on the ice. It's just it's an image that sticks with you.
I remember that too. I think at one point I saw just the murder scene of this movie when I was way too young, and it scared the shit out of me.
Which one?
When Gar kills everybody. When he hunts down and murders the 2 people on the road. I was like, holy shit. Like this. And I was way too young. Like I don't remember why I saw it, but I remember thinking, oh my God, like this is rated R.
That's what's so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Literally what you just that scene specifically. And I feel like that's just a larger element of the movie in general. What's surprising about this movie to me isn't the dark comedy, but how fucking scary a lot of it is, like this criminal aspects. The kidnapping scene is scary where Gare, however you pronounce his name, kills the cop and then follows the other car on the road. Like, the wood chipper scene is just pretty shocking. But like some of those moments are like pretty fucking terrifying. And like, and the music when he's following that car and that shot of him profile where he just flicks the cigarette. You're like,
it looks so cool.
It looks awesome. I mean, Peter Stormare is always the MVP in anything he's in.
He's so good.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's amazing
in The Lost World. He's amazing in Armageddon. I mean, Bad Boys 2. Every fucking.
Yes.
Come on, man.
He is wonderful. He makes an appearance in Minority Report too.
Oh yeah. He's the one that gives Tom Cruise the eyes. Yeah. Dude, again, he's so fucking memorable.
He is, and he's very scary. He's super weird looking. And it's overshadowed by how weird looking Buscemi is, but he's a scary, weird looking dude.
Yeah, he is.
But yeah, I remember for some reason having that impulse of like, oh, this is rated R. Oh my God. And then I remember like my parents had seen it and were like talking about it at some point. Oh, Fargo, oof. And I was like a kid, like, oh, not gonna be able to watch that one. And then I think I saw it when I was like 14. I remember it was a movie like I bought the DVD of, same as you. Like I knew it was good. I'd probably seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And maybe even The Big Lebowski beforehand.
Okay.
So I knew the Coen Brothers were. And then I bought and watched the DVD of it. And was like, all about it. So I don't remember why I did that. I think it was just like a movie I thought was going to be good.
Well, what I feel like Fargo falls under the category of like movie, like in our generation, movies that we got introduced to at teenage years and just like bought it on DVD or Blu-ray. Cause it was introduced to us during that time of like the DVD revolution.
And it was on sale or something. It's like, it was
on sale. Like movies that we discovered, like, Super Troopers is another one. Old School, like, good. I mean, even Goodfellas. I mean, Goodfellas is just a classic that.
But a lot of movies had that secondary kind of run when they came back out on DVD. Like I remember, I'm not a huge fan of Scarface, but Scarface wasn't in print until maybe 2003 or 4.
Yep, that is the perfect example of the movies I was just talking about. Yeah. I remember that movie when it came out in 2003, like the 20th anniversary DVD.
Yeah,
everyone at my boarding school went and bought it. I had bought it before I even saw it. And
I think I did too. I think
it.
that I watched it for the first time. And I bought the
Yeah.
fucking pan and scan version too. So I think I still own it, but I hate myself for
What's
doing
pan and scan again? It like
that.
kind
Full
of
instead of widescreen.
right. It's a full
So
screen, so it's like it's cropped, but you can also like move the image, right, or
yeah,
something.
I'll give you an engineer's answer. So in widescreen, it's obviously the proportions and the aspect is different. So
Right.
it's different because it's made usually to fill a theater screen. And at the
Right.
time, our tube TVs were not widescreen. Like you could
Right.
get maybe a big screen that would be 16:9, but like a standard def TV that you're going to put your DVDs through were 4:3, so that's more of a square.
Right.
So you had to take a movie and take the film of it and transfer it to video. And when you did that, you changed it from the 16:9, the wider, to the square. So parts of things that were in the frame are now not going to fit anymore. So if you had someone who was on the far right or left edge of the frame, by putting it into a square, you would cut them out. So you would pan over in the way you were scanning the 35 millimeter film and cut off the opposite side. So you would pan to the right in your telecine, which is basically just another camera that's going into video, and pick up that part of it, but then you'd cut off the left side of the screen.
Right.
So there was like a guy who ran the telecine process who would basically decide what would end up in the pan and scan version of it. And sometimes they did a good job and sometimes they did a terrible job, and you get like half a person's face in there. But they did that for all VHS copies, and then DVD kind of brought back the widescreen aspect ratio. And when you'd hear like your parents complain about black bars being on the top and bottom of the screen, that I will say dumb people think that you're seeing less of the movie, but in fact you're actually seeing more, because to fill the screen you have to switch to the square. So that's a quick lesson.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. Thanks for that information. Seriously, very detailed. And I gotta say, one thing I'm proud of, and I hope this doesn't sound too like arrogant little kid thing, but I've always loved widescreen. Like the first, because I had some DVDs that were full screen, but
yes, that's the pan and scan. Full screen and pan and scan are the same thing. I'm sorry,
because I think people didn't realize like, oh, you have a full screen TV, well then you want this one. Yep. But then I remember I got The Mummy Returns, one of my first DVDs that I ever bought, and it was widescreen. It was like 240, 235, whatever, and I was like, this looks fucking awesome. Like this looks like a real movie. I want this forever. And when I went to boarding school, I remember I had a copy of American Pie 2 on full screen. And I remember there was this kid in another dorm who had American Pie 2 widescreen. I feel bad about this to this day. But I was like, oh, let me borrow it. And I switched his widescreen with my full screen. And I was like, hey, thanks for borrowing it. And I gave it back my full screen and like totally got away with it.
That's amazing. He never called you on that?
Never noticed it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so that was my justification of that. Like, if he notices, then I'm a piece of shit and I'll give it back. But he never noticed. So I was like, well, he doesn't care. I do.
That's amazing. That's incredible. That's one of the best DVD crimes I've ever heard of. That's amazing.
Dude, I remember there was this kid at my boarding school who everyone was like, oh, he steals stuff. Like, he steals stuff. And I remember, like, he came to my room when we were hanging out, and I had just bought Scarface and Too Fast, Too Furious.
Oh, baby.
And he goes, oh, man. Because he's like, can I borrow some of these? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, because I wanted to be his friend, but I was also like, oh, shit. Like, people are saying he steals stuff. And he was like, oh, man, Too Fast, Too Furious is coming with me. And the way he said it, it was like, he was like, this is mine now.
Yeah, you're like, I'm never seeing this fucking thing
and
again.
I was terrified. So I was on him like a hawk, like, for the next couple of days. Like, oh, man, you watch it yet? Oh, it's so good. And then, like, when he's like, oh, I watched it, I was like, all right, man, well, let's go get it. Like, let me go get it. And, like, I had to follow him back to his room. And I could tell he, like, begrudgingly, like, gave it back. Like, he didn't expect me to, like, be that.
Yeah. Have the follow-up. Oh, nice work.
And I was really proud of myself. Like, and I remember we were still like, friendly after that, but like I never lent him another movie.
Yeah.
And he never asked, because I think he knew like
he knew that you knew.
He cares. Like he gives a shit and he's not an idiot. So I was like, there's no way. That's
wonderful.
But yeah, it was great. But so yeah, Fargo, literally the only thing I remember from childhood was that poster. And it didn't really, you'd think that it would be talked about a lot at a place like boarding school, and probably it was, but I just didn't hear about it. But I don't remember hearing much about it there. It was actually in college at film school, like kids being like, you got to see Fargo. And my freshman year was the year that No Country for Old Men came out.
Yep.
And that I feel like that honestly might have been my introduction to the Coen Brothers, because like I had heard about them peripherally.
It's a hell of an introduction. Holy shit!
I know. I had heard about them and like knew who they were, but then I remember I think you went with me. It was
I probably did.
Garrett and you at the Garrett Meyer. Shout out to Garrett Meyer if you're listening. I know he likes the show. We love you, dude. Garrett Meyer, Fort Worth, Texas.
There's our shout out quota.
There's our shout out. It was you, me, Garrett, and I think maybe Nathan. I can't remember, but either way, and Nathan, shout out if you're listening too. We went to some like theater on Catella, like one of the orange movie theaters. The Century, yeah. And we saw it, and we were like all just blown the fuck away. And that was again my first introduction. And then I think I watched Big Lebowski, and I was like, whoa, these guys are fucking nuts. Like they made No Country for Old Men and this. Like, just two completely different things. And I don't
remember going with you for that. I wish I did.
I feel like you were there. You know what? Either you were there or you and I talked about it and you sent me an article on the ending. That might have been it, actually. But I feel like you and I talked about it a lot freshman year.
I was really into the Coen Brothers, still am, and I was really into Cormac McCarthy and still am. So I had read that book when it came out a couple of years.
I read the book after I saw the movie
earlier, and I was like really amped for that movie. And I don't remember seeing it with you, but I remember I saw it 3 times in the theater, which was a lot for me on a first run.
One of those must have been with us then.
I know I
feel like we went after some like fucking fraternity bullshit. Like I feel like we all went because like
it makes sense. The only one I remember for sure going is I went with my buddy Baggett, and I borrowed my other buddy Rick's car, and he had a manual transmission, which I just learned to drive, but I couldn't. It had like a thing where you had to pop it into reverse, and you had to lift the stick up to get it. I couldn't get the fucking thing in reverse for like 10 minutes, and I'm like watching the clock.
That's
like
amazing.
I'm gonna miss. I'm like I already seen the movie, but I felt bad that my buddy Baggett was gonna miss the beginning. I was like, oh man, the beginning rules. And I fucking finally figured it out and got us over there.
The beginning is amazing.
So mad about that car. Years later, still upset.
And haven't let it go.
Yeah.
Speaking of cars, the car in Fargo. So that opening shot, it took me a while, but I didn't realize it until like watching it this time that like, oh, that opening car, that's Macy driving to Fargo.
He's
to
bringing
drop
the
off,
Sienna.
Bringing the what is it, Sierra? I think.
Sierra? Is it a Sierra?
I think it's Sierra. Yeah, he's bringing the Sierra. He's towing it with him. But yeah, that's also one of my favorite title cards of all time.
Amazing.
Like that opening title card and the music, the crescendo. It's just
super good.
It's incredible. I listened to the score yesterday as I was cooking dinner.
Couldn't stop. It's going through my head right now. I love it. It's so fucking good.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And it is. There's a big crescendo there. Like it's a big time score. Like it's almost at odds with how stupid and minuscule the events of the movie are.
I know. And it's also
interesting.
Also almost a little bit at odds with the Coen Brothers in general. Like if you watch a lot of their movies, they don't really have big sweeping go for broke scores like this one.
No.
I mean, No Country for Old Men, there's like no score.
Yeah, barely.
You know, there's like one thing. The only score I remember is the end credits. Like,
I remember the end credits. There
might be one. There might be. What I remember is like tone.
Yeah.
I don't remember score. I remember tone.
I don't either.
And the end credits is like very, very minimal. Yeah. And I feel like I'm trying to think of other movies that they've done that I've Big Lebowski doesn't have a score. It just has
it's just got a soundtrack.
Yeah. A Serious Man I actually think does have a score, if I'm not mistaken. Which A Serious Man is one of the most underrated movies and underrated Coen Brothers movies ever. I love that film.
I don't know that I've seen that since it came out, but I remember watching that. I didn't see it in the theater, but I watched it after, and I loved it.
Yeah, I saw it on at home too. I didn't see it in the theater, but I just love the story of the goy's teeth.
That's what I remember the most from the movie. Yeah. The goy's. And then later someone says, "You talking about the goy's teeth?" Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, "A red owl." He goes, it's a red owl. Groceries, what have you? Like just all the little details. What I think the Coen Brothers do such a good job of is like just, you know, minutia in these characters' lives and like just the things that they talk about. Like, and they do a lot of it so economically in Fargo. There's a lot of one shots in there.
Yes. The
Like,
one that stuck out to me is when the cop goes to talk to the bartender and he's
yep,
like sweeping his driveway off, and it's one take, and
yeah.
it's really a weird conversation, but it's amazing.
Well,
It's
yeah,
amazing how he's making it nicer than the exchange clearly was. Where he's like substituting words, like, he called me a jerk, didn't care for that.
Yeah, he called me a jerk, but didn't use that word, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And he's clearly talking about Buscemi, and they're like, he's getting, and so the cop's getting all this information. Then all of a sudden he's like, oh, it's gonna be cold later, yeah. And like they're looking up, checking the weather, and then they both just walk away. Like, every little part in that movie. I was reading Roger Ebert's review because he fucking loved Fargo, and one of the things he said was like the smaller roles feel bigger than they are because they're so well written and so well observed.
Yes.
And like even William H. Macy's wife, who by the way, I hated her immediately. I wonder if that's the point. I like her voice is so shrill. I was just like, oh my God. Like I just couldn't.
I know a lot of people with that accent.
Oh boy.
Who legitimately have it, and that's how they talk. And she is going probably a little too hard compared to reality, but she drills that cadence of every sentence she says. It sounds like a question because she comes up in her inflection at the end of every sentence, and it is really annoying.
Yeah, she's really annoying, which I wonder if that's the point.
I don't know. It's weird because she has one of the roughest times out of anyone in here, and there are moments where we should be sympathetic towards her, and we're kind of not either because of how the perspective is or what. But I agree. She's annoying.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like I think, you know, you're not sympathetic to Macy at all. I mean, he's just like a total
if at all, it just gets less and less.
I mean, maybe at the maybe at the start a little, but like he does such a good job of seeming innocent but clearly being like a slimy piece of shit.
And like it's a movie about dumb people just doing dumb shit, and it's a snowball of just stupid crap. And his plan is terrible. It goes super wrong, and yet he's like surprised that he couldn't pull it off. Like he legitimately thinks it's going to work, and it's it's not gonna work.
Yeah, not only is he surprised that he can't pull it off, the whole movie he's trying desperately to continue to not only pull it off, but just to like add more to it if he needs to.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'll do whatever. Like I'm gonna get this done, and that's part of the genius of the movie is that it's about dumb people doing dumb shit, and you know, but ultimately like the if you could give it like a one-word theme, I would say it's about greed. Like it's completely about greed.
You know, the first time I rewatched it over the weekend, I was just caught up in how fucking good it is, and how tight the script is. It's a very by modern standards, it's like 95 minutes long. That's like very
perfect length.
The performances are great. It's a good movie. It's when it's violent, it's awesome. It does it has many elements of a horror film, especially making stuff that's terrible funny. But the second time I watched it, I was really. I don't know if I've really thought about it this way, but it's really a movie about people, and especially in the upper Midwest, covering their awful desires and bad things that they want to do or are going to do with an artificial niceness, and where that ends. And that, to me, like this morning I was watching it, that was like loud and clear. And the only person who really isn't covering any darkness is Norm. Like he just seems to be a pleasant dude, but there's also a scene where he looks into a bag of worms crawling in dirt, and it is a fucking close-up of night crawlers. And that's basically as unsubtle as the Coen brothers got on, hey, all this sheen of politeness and people kind of being nice to each other, there's a lot of shit crawling around under the dirt.
That's such a great fucking metaphor, because I noticed that shot too.
It's really weird. It must have been fucked up in the theater because it's a very close up.
It's a little jarring, because you see him open it in in a medium-ish shot, and then all of a sudden it's right in there, and you're like, whoa, what the fuck? But like Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that it's Norm, or I'm glad you made a point to say that it's Norm who's probably the only one
Yeah.
isn't really covering anything, because even Marge, when she has
Yes.
dinner with Mike Yanagita
At the
and
Radisson, so you know it's
at
good.
the Radisson, yeah, at the Radisson, the nicest restaurant in town, and you know that's what the thing that how I watch movies is this, like I watch them and I notice things and things stick out to me, but because I have ADD, sometimes my mind wanders while I watch them and I don't remember things right away in this way that other people do right away. So that's why I rewatch things a lot. Um, but more or less what happens on a first watch, if I'm really dialed in, then I notice things, but I can't quite articulate why I notice them and like why they're there. So like what you just said about the worms and dirt, the night crawlers thing, like I noticed that shot, right? And I was like, okay, that's there for a reason, like 100%. But hearing you articulate it, I'm like, yep, that's why it's there. Like I wouldn't have been able to do that on my own, or at the very least, I wouldn't have been able to do that without watching it a few more times.
I think that I'm not awesome at that, and I think I would struggle to be employed as like a film critic, because it's hard to get to me to really get your thoughts in order after like one viewing of something.
Right.
You probably get your emotions like, oh, I liked it, and this scene was great, but some of the thematic shit can be tough to put words to just on one viewing. And people who can do that, they have my admiration. I don't.
Yeah.
I've never been that quick to turn around.
Well, you know, it's like visually still, you know, that's another thing that sometimes is hard to pick up on. It's like, why is that shot there, or why are they shooting it in that way? I'm much better when I'm making my own stuff as to doing that than I am of like watching something else and seeing like, oh, why did they choose to shoot that in a close up? Then you know, whatever. Like I'm much better at doing that on my own. Like when I'm on set, being like, oh, let's do a little push in there or whatever. But you know, Marge has this dinner with Mike Yanagita, and you know, she doesn't tell Norm about it. And so she is even like so it even shows that like she has these thoughts herself, you know. But then when she's on the phone with her friend, and her friend is like, oh yeah, everything Mike told you was a lie, like he's had some psychiatric problems, that forces her to be like, oh, this guy that I trusted deceived me, so who else has deceived me? And that makes her go back to William H. Macy.
It does, and it's a weird scene.
And
yeah,
it's a really uncomfortable scene.
I remember I couldn't find anything about this. Like I found a lot of stuff when I was just doing some quick research on people having questions about the Mike Yanagita scene, or like what the deal was with this. And I thought I saw some interview or maybe some DVD extra feature or something where the Coen brothers were talking about it, or maybe this is just some story I heard, but I remember that it was like they specifically put in a scene that had nothing to do with the movie, in like defiance of, we can put a scene in here that's totally random and still tell a story without having to move plot or character forward. And it was that, for whatever reason, I remember that being some kind of explanation of the genesis of that scene, and I couldn't find anything about that. So I don't know if that's confirmed, but you're right. It's a weird scene. It's super uncomfortable. Mike Yanagita calls Marge in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And she doesn't tell Norm about it.
And did you notice that when Norm reaches over to put his arm on her, it's right when Mike says, like, I saw you on the TV, like right when he, like right at the moment when he was like lusting after her.
Yeah, and it's his left arm and it's his left hand with his right arm.
The ring finger. Yep.
So yeah, that's interesting. And when she goes there, like she's got a little nervous energy. She's like double checking her hair. It's got like a first date feeling to it.
Oh yeah.
And that seems weird for a little bit, and then it doesn't go, like super doesn't go the way that Mike Yanagita wants it to go, but it ends up being more of a integral scene than it seems, because you're right. She gets on the phone. It almost like brings her to terms with the Minnesota nice. Like, oh
yeah,
this guy lied to me. Lundergaard's lying to me. And I think it's not really there in that scene when she's talking to her friend, but there is an undercurrent of maybe she's lying to herself about being happy in Brainerd.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of settling with Norm for this life. But she ultimately is okay with it.
Yeah.
so whatever lie you're telling yourself, hopefully it's a good one. I think by the end of the movie,
Right.
everyone who's told themselves a lie that was dark and trying to have a smiley face on top of it gets various bad things visited upon them, but she kind of has a moment where she's okay with where she is in life and doesn't need to front anymore. And that's, that's a lot of thematic stuff on top of a movie where Steve Buscemi goes through a wood chipper. So it really is a great movie. It's hilarious. It's got, weird existential stuff like that. And then, it's Peter Stormare saying, "Where is Pancake's house?" So it's good. It's the high and low.
Well, like Roger Ebert said in his review, the last line of his review was like, movies like Fargo are why I love movies. And I couldn't agree with him more because of what you just said. It's like it has really like deep thematic stuff and striking visuals and just weird shit that happens. It's just a fucking movie. It's, for me, like last year's Uncut Gems, like that was my example of like, this is a fucking movie. Like it has Sandler getting a colonoscopy and him punching a huge R&B pop star The Weeknd in the face, and Kevin Garnett is in it, and and his brother-in-law is like trying to kill him for money. It's just, there's so much going on that's just like, what is this? It's like, I don't know, like there are just certain movies that like you can't quite, I mean, you can explain them and you can genreify them. Like Fargo's a crime thriller, pretty easy, but there's so much other stuff to it too. There's so many layers. And, those are the types of movies that I think we love. And I think what's happened, which is unfortunate, is like what people are consuming now. It's like, it needs to be an easy sell, and it needs to be something that's like easily digestible. Well, it doesn't need to be, but there's a lot of, the markets are like turning towards that way. I mean, like that's why superhero movies do so well. It's because like, oh, who cares? It's superheroes. Boom, done. Like, but like, that's why
some of them are better than others, but like,
for sure.
Fargo's a really good movie just overall, but it's a really well written movie.
It is.
Even the exposition dump in the beginning, that is a little bit like, oh, okay, I know what you're doing, because Steve Buscemi says like, oh, let's go over the plan one more time, which he uses that phrasing to do exposition where if you kind of know how movies are written, you're like, no one talks like this. Like this is a sentence just to tell the audience what's happening.
Yeah, but kind of, I'm forgiving of that stuff because every fucking movie has that.
There's grades of it being done well versus not well.
Yes, I agree with that.
I thought that was a little on the verge of like, it's kind of in my face. However, the things like Mike Yanagita, he doesn't just show up out of nowhere. He calls her, right, and says he's in the Twin Cities. Like even like every exchange leads to something else in the film. Right. When Steve Buscemi is talking, when he has his total silence talk with Peter Stormare, he uses the phrase "Whoa, Daddy," in a fun way, which is basically setting up him to say that later when the cop gets shot in front of him.
In the fucking head, yeah, right.
And things have that kind of symmetry throughout the film, and that's what makes it so satisfying to watch. And I think that, and God, I wish I'd been in the theater for its opening weekend. I knew about the wood chipper before I ever saw this movie. There is no reason why you would ever see that coming at the end. She shows up, you kind of hear it in the background getting louder, and then that's out of nowhere. Like people,
it's fucking crazy.
Like, holy shit! It's in his little foot with the sock.
That part's
mulched.
That part's the most disturbing is the fucking foot with the sock.
There's nothing to warn you. It's just like, oh, this is really bad.
Yeah, I think I had heard about it before I saw the movie too. But to your point about like everything leading to another, it's funny because the interpretation of the Mike Yanagita scene, the more popular one, is that it's just a random event and like it doesn't have to lead to anything. But the thing that I read and the thing that I ended up saying was that like how it kind of teaches Marge like, oh, this is the Minnesota Nice bullshit. Other people have been deceiving me. That makes a lot more sense to me. But it's funny
and how quickly she accepts it. She accepts the Minnesota Nice, but after it's kind of showed her how shallow that is, she's able to solve the crime.
Right. And Noah Hawley, the guy who developed Fargo for TV, which by all accounts is great.
I've never seen it. I gotta watch it. I'm
I haven't
obviously
either.
jacked on Fargo, having watched the movie twice.
I know.
Recently,
I want to start it too. But apparently he looks at that as like a random nothing event that just like happens to people and feels more like life. And it also leads into the big question that I wanted to ask, which is that it makes the story feel more like a true story because this is what happens in life. So this leads me to ask, is this a true story? Because I read a lot of different accounts.
No, I've read numerous interviews where the Coen brothers have basically admitted that they put the true story disclaimer up on the front just as a joke.
Yeah, and they said that it gets people who are watching it on screen to be more like accepting of things.
And by the end, you've seen some
actually happened.
But no, it's not a true story. The thing I completely forgot is I probably saw the movie in maybe 2002 or 3, and it just seemed like it was set in the time period that it came out, but it's actually a period piece. It actually takes place in 1987.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why I never realized that until recently.
I didn't realize that until this time either, but it looks so similar to 96. Like it didn't feel like an 80s, but and who knows, maybe that was the point. I mean, the thing is that regardless, and what I think they did such a great job of is like when I think of like, you know, the Dakotas and Minnesota, I think of that. Like those types of cars, those types of bars, those types of homes. It's like that's what I think of, and they fucking nailed it. And that also leads me to one other thing I loved about this movie is just the whole environment around it, the snow. There's something inherently interesting about movies that are just like drenched in snow. And just there's something inherently mystical and mysterious about them. Like a movie like A Simple Plan, which I think is another underrated movie. That's a great.
That would be. I was thinking this
a good follow up to this,
and this is a great follow up to Misery, which is another cold.
I was just gonna say
that's a good one, two, three punch.
These three right here, and then you have some that are not so good, like Dreamcatcher, which is like what the fuck happens in that movie.
I like that movie, but for the wrong reasons.
I do too. I like it for the wrong reasons too. But at the same time, like I remember seeing that trailer and being like, I'm in. So me personally, I'm just interested in movies that like take dark movies that take place like completely in the snow, because I don't know, it kind of feels like people that do terrible shit, they genuinely think they can get away with it because like, we'll just bury it in the snow, but they forget like snow melts, dummy. Like
worst idea.
It's the worst idea ever. But some other things I wanted to talk about, I took some notes. So, but yes, I had heard that, like the Coen brothers at first said like, you know, oh, well, we heard about these murders that happened in, I think it was Maine or something that like we inspired it. But then they ended up saying like, no, we did that so the audience would be more accepting of like what they saw on screen. And they eventually said the only thing true about it is that it's a story.
Yeah. So there you
and
go.
That makes sense. So the other things, there are great music cues in the movie. The title card, obviously, like when the closer headlight appears right after the timpani strikes.
Oh yeah.
The cut right to the bar in Fargo on the bell, the cut to the blue ox, and my favorite of the whole movie is when after they shoot the cop and there's that headlight appearing down the highway.
That is, I mean, that scene is amazing. Yeah. It goes from 0 to 100 to 1,000 in incredible
real quick
speed. Oh man. But yeah, when you see those lights, like you already had a bad time with the guy getting shot in the head.
Oh yeah,
that nice little blood spurt, and then it's like, oh, this is actually going to become much worse now.
This is going to get worse. Yeah, those poor fucking people. They're just in the wrong, and they could not have picked two more sympathetic-looking actors to be those poor people.
Oh yeah,
like those innocent, nice-looking, chubby, like, huh? And it's like, oh no, they're fucking dead.
And it leads to one of a couple moments in the film where you don't see something and someone fills you in. Like Marge tells you what happened. The poor girl's got a defensive wound in her hand and her head. So she reached out and as Gar shot her, which is awful to think about. But you don't get to see that as an audience.
Right.
So if you're not paying attention, maybe you miss it. But if you are paying attention, you get another like, oh, I don't like it.
I know, it's gross. Gare Grimsrud, what a fucking name. Peter Stormare.
Carl Showalter, also a great name.
Carl Showalter's great too.
And amazing turtlenecks throughout the whole film.
Oh yeah. I wanted to ask you about this in the opening scene in the bar when he says, you know, Jerry, you're asking us to, you know, carry out this task for you, but you won't. And I'm just wondering, like, he won't what? He won't like tell him what's going on? Like, what is he saying there?
Both times I watched it, it seemed weird. It's even funnier because Gare tries to talk him out of it. he says, or just ask your fucking wife for the money.
Right.
There, like that exchange seems to be going to the point of, hey, you know this is a bad idea, right? Like maybe don't do it. And then he loses his train of thought, and he's like, well, fuck, let's just take a look at this car. It's like the greed overcomes his desire to tell this guy, this is a shitty plan, you're probably gonna fuck it up. He's like,
yeah, maybe he's saying like
you got the car here or whatever.
Yeah, maybe he's saying like you won't be honest with yourself, or like you won't acknowledge that this is a bad idea.
It's a very interesting exchange early on. And
it is. It's what sets the movie apart, I think, because it's like, you know, right away you're like, okay, this is different. This is weird.
Yeah. And I feel like I hadn't thought about that ever before either. Like that, his little you won't dropping off. That it's like, I don't know. It's like you're this close to not having all this bad shit happens, and it does anyway. And it's just a really interesting line in the way he delivers it too.
It is interesting. And I also think that the reason that probably didn't hit before, I mean, you know, what's funny is like obviously, you know, movies shape us as we age, like as we grow up, and like the things we watch when we're young, but we do develop, you know, more adept analytical qualities as we get older. And like I definitely understood and interpreted this movie way better than I did when I saw it like 10 years ago or whatever. I didn't really think about in film school, like I didn't think about theme or character or, you know, all that stuff. And like you learn about it in class and stuff, but I didn't think about like why a movie affected me or why it just did, you know? And I think that's fine. And I think I'm glad I started out that way, because I ultimately learned like film school was like, that was I mean, look, I'm going to fail again in life, but like that was my place to fail. I failed miserably in film school. I never made a good short, not one.
Well, me neither.
And no, but seriously. And it was like, you know, I think that you just, you get more discerning with age and with time. And like, now I can watch things and I feel more confident being like, what's that about? And, you know, and even, okay, so like, I didn't get the Nightcrawler shot, right? Or like whatever, but I did get the action of like the husband putting his arm over her at that moment in the conversation. So it's like little things like that. But now that you've explained the Nightcrawler shot, I'm going to be more like alert for that stuff, not only in Coen Brothers movies, but in other movies. And it's like, oh, right. And like, yeah, I remember seeing The Irishman with Khalil last year, and we saw it in a theater.
I did as well, because I'm not going to not see that shit in a theater. Yeah. Get the fuck out of here.
And not only that, that's never going to happen again. Like those people in that movie directed by that guy on a big screen, that's it. And we were walking home after talking about like how we liked it and everything. And Khalil goes, dude, and even that last shot of like how we see him through the open door, like they're so terrified of finality that they can't even close the door all the way. And I was like, that's amazing. I didn't like pick up on that, but that's so true.
Yeah.
Like that's fantastic. So like that happens, I think, the older you get. And I think with a movie like Fargo, this movie begs for that kind of analysis, I think, because there's so much peppered in there.
I think most movies beg for that kind of analysis, but
well, most good movies. You know?
I would say even bad movies. I like talking about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I also think of note in film school, but I did learn a lot about pan and scan, so it's really paid off on that.
No, but it's true though. I think you're actually, you know what? I think you're right. I think because no one, look, obviously no one sets out to make a bad movie. They want to put everything they have into it, and like why they use, you know, like I know I've only made shorts, but like for the most part, I think hopefully for all, even, yeah, you're right. For all of them, even the bad ones, I can probably tell you like why a certain shot is, you know, where it is. And like, and that's the other thing I've learned through watching great movies is that you obviously, you know, everything needs to be in there, but like a shot like the Nightcrawler shot, it's not like Fargo's going to have like every scene have a shot like that, you know, where it's like you have that shot in there for a specific reason and it makes sense, you know, and like it's there for a reason and it sticks out to you, but it's not like every scene needs that shot in order for the movie to be great. But the other quick things, I love that they hang out at McDonald's about the kid that he's like, I'm gonna go just to McDonald's. Yeah. I love the first scene in the dealership where the guy's yelling at Macy about the True Coat.
One of my favorite line deliveries ever. I hope you say it.
You're a fucking liar.
Fucking liar.
Yeah, fucking liar. And but then his wife goes, Bucky, please, which is just hilarious.
It's the first instance where you see that there is a realness and a darkness behind the polite facade.
Yep.
And it was warranted there, but the wife doesn't like it. She's like, how dare you break face, in this situation.
Yeah,
it's one of the best lines. Fucking line. That line, and there's this other line that really bothers me that I love when Jerry's talking to Wade and Stan Grossman. Wade goes, if I wanted bank interest, I'd go see Bill Deal over at Midwest Federal. And Stan goes, he's at North Star, and Wade goes, he's it, and that's it. The conversation keeps going. Just the way he goes, he's it, and then he just doesn't say it. I love.
He doesn't finish. That is amazing. Those are my
two favorite lines of the movie.
I love that. That's in the scene where Macy goes to them and they're like, "What's your finder's fee?" And he learns that he's not getting the $750,000. That leads me to another thing. What debt is Macy in? Like, what trouble is he in? Is he just trying to put on another scheme, or is he like, does he owe people money?
I don't know what he's been doing with the cash, but he's been falsifying loans against cars that he clearly didn't sell, and I don't know what he's done with the cash, but he needs at least $320,000, and it's interesting that you don't really realize that he's not telling Carl Showalter how much money he's going to make off of this thing. It's actually much larger than anyone really realizes. But I don't know the nature of his crime. I don't know if it's gambling or whatever, but he's been embezzling some shit, and it's bad.
Well, yeah, that's why there's that phone call that are just like, where they're like, oh, well, we need the the vehicle ID numbers. Like, well, I got the loan. Yeah. And that happens twice. And which also leads me to another one of my favorite shots in the film is, I don't know if you noticed this, but both times he's on the phone with that guy, it's one shot and it's a push in. Mm-hmm. And the second one in particular, as the pressure is mounting, how it's like because the first call he gets in the second shot of that is from Buscemi, who's like, blood has been shed. We need more money. And it's a slow push. And then that guy calls again. And he's like, my patience is ending. Like, it's over. And we're like right up there with Macy as this pressure is just like, it's just getting worse and worse. Yeah. It's just such a genius way to visually tell a story. And the license plate joke was cheesy, but it made me laugh. Also, the character Stan Grossman, the name, that's Bryan Cranston's character's name in Little Miss Sunshine, the guy who tries to sell Greg Kinnear's book.
That is a really weird reference. That's awesome.
I wonder if it's a coincidence, though. I wonder if Michael Arndt is a great screenwriter, seems like a smart guy. I wonder if he that was a little nod to this. I don't know. Maybe not.
That's a really good catch if it is. That's hilarious.
It would be cool if it was a reference. The buffet looks disgusting. That's exactly the food I think of.
How dare you?
Oh, God. That's exactly the food I think of when I think of, like, gross Minnesota winter, like, oh God,
get out of here. That's a delightful Bavarian lunch buffet.
Oh God, I mean, I don't want any part of it. Not for me. The character Shep is exactly the type of guy who would hate me. Like me, Andrew, like he would fucking hate me, and I probably wouldn't like him because he's just one word, like just doesn't suffer fools. Like that is not me.
Which is why he vouches for Gare and not Carl. He doesn't know Carl, but
they're very similar, which is great. So the last three things is I love that Marge shoots Gare in the same way that he shot the guy running from the car.
Yep.
And Frances McDormand is on screen for less than an hour. And
doesn't come on until the 32-minute mark.
Yeah, doesn't come on until 32 minutes, and the movie ends at 1:34, and there are still scenes that she is not in throughout that last hour, and so she won the Oscar with, we're talking like maybe 45, 50 minutes of screen time.
There's no way it's that much. I'd say it's probably, if you tallied it up, it's probably less.
Wow.
There's a significant think of all the stuff that happens without her.
Right, yeah. Actually, you're right. Yeah, it's probably less because there's that whole moment with Shep busting in on Buscemi and the hooker, and then there's Buscemi calling Macy. Yeah, there's tons of shit.
There's a lot that she's not in. It's actually incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah, she's an incredible actress. The last thing I noticed was a special thanks to Peter Graves, the actor who plays Captain Over in Airplane, which I was like, what? And I went through his IMDb. I was like, has he worked with them before? And it didn't look like it. So maybe they're just friends with him. I don't know.
That's awesome.
It's pretty great.
There's a cut that I really love when they push into the TV and it's static.
Yes.
And it switches and it's another show. And that's I'm assuming that wasn't CGI. I think that was just legitimate because it's because of the time. But the on the TV, when he finally gets it working and they're having the soap opera about the girl being pregnant, the guy in that TV is Bruce Campbell in a cameo. He's credited on Wikipedia, but I don't think he's in the official credits. But you can see his chin through the stat.
I didn't catch that. That's great.
Weird.
He's got a very pronounced chin. Well, look, I mean, this is definitely still good. There's no question. This wasn't even a debate. This was just something we had to talk about.
Just had to, yeah. I could just see myself texting you a lot of this stuff, and I was like, you know what? Well, let's talk about it because I love it, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I love the Coen Brothers, and maybe it's because this is the one that won awards. Well, I guess if you don't count No Country for Old Men, but for some reason, I think
this was the first one that won awards for them.
I feel I like take this movie for granted. Like it's not. Like I said, it needs to go back in the yearly viewing rotation because I love it. It's great. There's so much to enjoy.
You know what else too, though, is No Country for Old Men as well. Like No Country for Old Men, I watched that, rewatched it maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Holy shit, does that hold up too?
Oh,
like I mean, both of these do. They're and A Serious Man. I mean, look, they're great filmmakers regardless, but yeah, there is. Every once in a while, you fucking strike gold and strike lightning, and you make something that is just so special. And this is one of those times.
I feel bad. I don't know why I overlook it, but I probably rewatched the other movies of theirs that I love more, and like I just take this one for granted, and I think that's wrong. This is great. It just really felt like good. I just was filled with delight like the whole time. Just immediately, I was just like, this is just something that I'm gonna fucking love, and I know it. And it's amazing. And I can't wait to revisit it again. So yeah, that wraps up our first emergency episode. We look forward to doing another one of these when we somehow revisit the same thing. Whether it'll be organic. Yes.
Yeah, whether it's movie, music, food, whatever. But yeah, more emergency episodes to come, and we will see you for our next regular episode in a little bit.